Hello everyone, welcome back to another tech video on my channel. Considering all the courses I have released in the last few weeks, I got a lot of comments and feedback asking to continue Angular Getting Started session. So today I'm going to take one more step from that. We are going to talk about routing, and also we are going to talk about services. Not only that, we are going to talk about guards, how you can protect your component and add validation and those stuff, little bit advanced stuff but not total advanced. And then I'll create other video to have a touch little advanced topic like ngrx and all those things with the Angular also modules, right? So to do this today video, I just modified my project little bit. The modified is not something you don't understand. I just added new component, right? So you learn how to add a component in the last video. So I follow the same step, identical step, and I added new component because to route you have to have one more component, and I don't want you to like look at me how I create a component and everything stuff, right? So that's very easy you to understand, right, what I have done, because I push my project into GitHub, right? So let me just show you. So here you can see, if you go to repositories, right, so you have Angular Getting Started YouTube repository, right? So here you can see this my entire project here. Okay, so if you go to history, you can see this is the episode 1 project, right? This is the project we completed in the last video, but this is the project, this is the commit. I have created one more new component, right? So you can go to that commit and understand what I changed, right? So therefore, I mean, it will easy you to follow up because you know what exactly changed, right? And I promise I didn't change anything. What something I didn't teach you, I just added new component. Okay, so let's see how this work, right? So let's first run this and make sure this is working. Okay, so it started. Let's go back here and see, now we have that, right? So I changed this one, right? So this one I added and I created a new component, right? So let me to take you a walkthrough about that. So first, if I go to index.html, so you can see here there is no any change. So here still we have a em root, right? But if you go to component.html, so you can see here last time it was just these em employees, but here I have added this navbar, right? So here you have a home, list employee, and a search. So that is what you see here, right? So, and also I created a home component, right? So in home component HTML, I added 2 cards to like, again, those the same thing. And then to get the background, the dynamic background, I use this Unsplash website. So you can use this Unsplash website. So it's kind of wallpaper website, but they have an API. So you can give a wallpaper number and then it push you the wallpaper, right? So I use a random number. So then it will, I mean, every time I refresh my page, I get a different wallpaper to my background. And the component is still nothing. Home component is, I didn't implement anything. Okay, so first thing is first. So let's see how the route works. So people say this is routes, but if you say route, that little makes sense, right? Okay, so by the way, in IT we have something like that. Some people call database, some people call database, some people call SQL, some people call SQL, right? Likewise, route, whatever. So the why we have a routing. So when you create a project, Angular itself asking, do you want to add Angular route, right? So you can say yes, and you can do whatever, or you can add like this in later. So let's say, usually in any web application, you have to have a navigation technique, right? User has to navigate. When you click the home button, it has to come to home. When you click to the about page, it has to go to the about page. When you go to employee, you have to go to employee somewhere. It can be menu basis, it can be some button or some card basis or something, or maybe user clicking some link, right? But we learn Angular is a SPA, single page application. When you say a single page application mean, we learn in the very first video. So what happens here in index.html, you have EM root, right? So what is this EM root? EM root is this one, right? So you can see the selector is a EM root, right? So what our browser does is it replaces this EM root along with this template, right? So now under this template we are saying it's a EM employee. So now what it does is it go to employee HTML page, template page, and replace that with this HTML code, right? So that means any given time you can have one or more component showing in your browser, right? But what we do is simply we replace component, right? So we don't reload pages, but we just replace the component, right? So what routing simply does is whenever you click a menu or when you click a button, it can replace the component, right? So like say for example, currently you have a list employee, right? So if you want to modify employee, when you click a button or when you click on the link of employee, it can load a new component where it's allow you to edit, right? So sometime you may need to pass data between components. That is a whole separate story. But here I'm going to show you how we can do the routing, right? So to do that, what we need to do is we need to go to app module and we need to import the router module first, right? So here let me stop the program, right? So I'm going to import, right? It should be import because we are taking from something Angular course. So let's get router module, right? So you get the router module. So now you need to tell what are the routes, right? So what are the routes you have, whether home, employee, or products, or what are the menus? In simple, let's say menus, right? What are the separate components you need to load whenever you use a click, right? So you can say route for route, right? So this is array of routes, right? The first route I'm going to say like first I need to say the path, right? So in my case, path is let's say employee. That's employees. And then I need to tell what is the component I want to load, right? So I want to load employee component. Okay, so that's one route. So then likewise, I have a other route. The path is home, right? This is a home component, right? And whenever this load directly, right? So I need to load home component, right? Either I can tell a component here, but I'll show you a different way to do that. I can ask redirect to, right? So redirect to home, right? And then here we need to tell path match equal full because I need to change everything to home component, right? So now I have these three routes are set, right? So that means now my application knows three different routes, right? So do we place these any like this anymore, right? So this employee component, no, we don't put employee component anymore because we are not placing component hard coded, right? So rather we are dynamically placing the component based on the way user click, right? For do that, I'm going to add here something called router outlet, right? So router outlet that will comes here. So now what it does is router will replace router outlet, right? So now if I go to app component, I have few buttons here. Let's say home, right? So home button, I need to tell route link, right? I'm going to tell route link. Route link is home, right? So now what happens here, whenever, no matter where you are, whenever user click on this home button, it activate the route link, right? So route link says it's to home, right? And then it go back to app module and see, okay, where the home, right? Home is a home component. It take the home component and get the HTML file or as a template file and replace this router outlet with that file, right? You understand how that works? Okay, cool. So now since we are loading like that, we don't need this. Let's say if you go here, right? So you don't need the selector anymore. Why? Because we are not placing as a selector to HTML file, right? So let's do the same thing for employee, right? So here what you can do is you can add router link to employees, right? Employees. So this is a one way of writing this, right? So let me to show you other way, right? So let me to show you other way. So there's other way to do that. Let's say you want to pass some ID, right? So let's say you want to load the employee component by passing some ID, right? Let's say a user click on the employee, so you need to get this ID and pass it, right? So in that case, what you can do is you can add this router link with the square brackets, right? So and here you can add that like this, right? You can add that. Oops. Right, like this, right? And here the next argument would be whatever your number, let's say 10 or something, right? So but this is not a hard-coded number, of course, right? So this is taking from like either user inputs or either something user has clicked or something like that, right? So anyway, so let's see how this goes. Okay, so for now, ideally it should work the two menu buttons what you have in the navy bar, and also ideally it should load my home component, right? It should load my home component. Okay, so let's go and see what happens here. Yeah, it loaded my home component, right? So this is the what I mean. You guys like the wallpaper, and if you refresh again, so you will get a different wallpaper because it's a random. Okay, right? So now if I click on the list employee, it will come back to my list employee component, right? If I click on the home component, it doesn't navigate to home. So let's see why the path is okay. I miss a R here, router link. Okay. So now if you click home, it go to the home, and if you click list employee, it come to the list employee, right? So here, though if you click the list employee here, it won't do anything, right? It won't do anything. So what you can do is you can go to home component. You can add the router link here also, right? So I'll show you the easy way, right? So you can add router link equal. Here, since I don't have to pass anything, I can tell it's a employees, right? So now when I click this button, it will load employees, right? But this is not usually what we do, right? I'll keep this commented, so later on you guys can refer that if you want, right? So but what we usually do is we implement this through a button because it's a button click, right? So what you can do is you can tell here whenever user clicked this, right, pass into load users function, load employees function, right? So load employees function. So now we don't have load employees. So now you go back to home component TS and you can create this function, right? So you can create this function. Okay. And here to do that, I need to pass private router and the type of router, right? So I mean, I hope you familiar with this syntax. This is completely equal. The last time, remember, we had like something like a, let's say you have a router variable, the router private variable here, right? And here then within the constructor you can say this dot router equal router whatever comes in. But rather than this is a short way, so this automatically create a local variable for us, so we can use that. So right, since it's a private, it only can access within this component. Okay. So what I can do is I'm going to load here this dot router dot navigate, right? So I'm going to tell navigate to navigation also take as array as a employees, right? So now to make sure, let me to comment this for now, right? And this is I removed. Okay, so now it will not work, right? So if you go to home, if you click this, oops, still it's coming. How come? Okay, let me to go and see why it is coming. Load employees. component. Right here. Okay, I think I didn't save that. Yeah. So it doesn't work, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this and save it. And so now it go with a navigation, right? So this is the way usually you do. You don't use a router link. Let's say you click on this particular user. When you click that, you need to pop this user into a new window, right? So then you cannot do like a router link because you don't know what the data is. So therefore you can use this technique, right? You can pass a router instance to your constructor, and then you can use this as a router.navigate, right? And the third way, if you want to get something, if you want to pass some value, let's say some example like this. So let's say you want to whenever user click on this, let's say some example, whenever user click on this, you need to take a particular value and pass that value also into the next component, right? So for that, what we can do is we can use something like this. Okay, so we can do like this. So let's say you go to the app module again, right? So app module, and you are creating a new route here saying employee/id, right? So employee/id. So that means now this time it is passing some value to other side, right? So now what I'm going to do is, if user click this one, right? So now I'm going to go here, come back, right? I'll show you how to do this with the router link first, right? So I'm going to comment this again, and I'm going to activate this one, and I'm going to activate this one, right? And here, so I can show you the different syntax. So I'm going to do is router link, and this is array, right? So this is an array. The one element of this is this one, right? And the second element is some sort of a number, right? So now whenever user click on the button, it will pass this number as well, right? So can you see here in the URL, it passed number 10, right? So that means it tells from this parent component, like if you go to list employee here, it doesn't have that, but if you go from here, it says okay, I got the number 10, right? So that means now based on this, I mean, I'm not spending other time to like create new component and take this and do it, right? Now you understand how to do that, because since I covered the fundamental, right? The whole point is now you can access this number 10 and do whatever you want, right? For example, you can access this number 10 on init, and you can send this to backend and get the number 10 employee and show that employee here. Okay, right? So that's how routing works. Mainly you can go with the router link, or you can go with the router navigation from the router instance, right? Both ways fine, depend on your situation. There is nothing what is right or what is wrong. So here, if you pass the IDs, you need to use this with like array syntax within the square bracket, and if not, you can use like a plain. Okay, right? So now we need to talk one more thing: how we can protect these routers, right? So for example, if maybe particular user don't have access to click this, right? Let's assume like that particular user don't have access to do this, right? So how we can protect this? To do that, Angular has a concept called guard, right? So what the guarding system does is, whenever you do something, before it execute the route, before it follow the route, it pass the request into the guard, right? So what the guard does is, guard go through its logic and see whether this is a legitimate request, whether this person has right to do that, or this is a correct request to pass it through route, right? If it is right, it will execute the route. If it is not, it will do whatever you're asking to do there, right? So let's see how to do that. Right, so let's create a guard. Let's take a scenario like this, right? So to make it short, because I'm going to cover the fundamental about the guard and how that works, right? So let's say whenever user click on here, right? So we are passing a department. I mean the user's current department, right? The click user's current department. We can take this from the user profile or somewhere, right? So maybe from the JW token, and we are going to talk about that also in the future video, how to use the JWT with this thing. And let's say you pass that ID into the route, and then you have a route guard. Let's go with that, right? You have a route guard. What that does is it check your employee ID, right? And if it is the ID is like odd number or even number, it's allowed to go there. And if it is an odd number, it doesn't allow to go there. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? In a practical perspective, but I'm going to show you how to implement the logic, right? Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a guard ng, right? Generate a guard, right? So guard is employees, right? Slash employee create employee guard, right? Create employee guard. Okay. So now it will generate a guard for me, right? So now it's asking whether this guard is a can activate or can activate child, can deactivate or can load, right? So you can guard any of these events, right? So in our case we need can activate. So in our case it's a can activate because I want to make sure I can activate this URL if this is satisfied, right? So here I generated the unit test file as well, so I'm going to remove that because I don't need it. Okay, so right, so you go here. So now you can see it has all the boilerplate code what you need, right? So don't worry about this. I'm going to explain this in a while, right? When we discuss about services, you can see here it's a class implement using can activate, right? So it has a can activate method, right? So in the can activate method, it passed the route. So that means you have access to all the parameters and information in the as this time about the route, and also you get the state, right? It can be a router state snapshot, right? And then it may return either observable boolean or a promise or a just boolean, whatever you want. So in our case, and keep in mind this is a very invalid business use case, right? There are no business use cases like this, but in order to demonstrate that, right? So as I said, I'm going to pass a department ID to the next component, right? So I'm going to extract this here, enter department ID equal, right? So you can access like route dot I think it's a param map, yes, param map dot get, right? So I'm going to get the ID into this variable, right? So usually department ID I need as a number, right? So therefore I need to pass this to number function in order to convert this string to number, right? So here I'm going to create a constructor, right? And to the constructor I'm going to get as a route as a private variable, right? Okay, cool. So now I'm going to implement a very odd logic. Just think this is, I mean, this is not coming from the user's parameter, right? So URL parameter, let's say you going to extract the user's JW token and extract the department number, right? So if department ID is, I'm going to check whether it's odd or even, right? And 0, then this dot route, let's say make this as a router to avoid this confusion, otherwise you will think what is this dot router dot navigate. I'm going to redirect it to home component, right? I want to redirect it to home component, right? So I think this has to go in an array, yeah, right? So if not return true, that means if it is not if it's odd number, it will go directly to the whatever your route. Okay, so let's see now we need to apply this route. So where this route goes, you go to app module, right? So it has to be here, right? So whenever you pass the ID, so here what you need to do is you can tell, right? So let me to can activate. So what is my guard, right? Employee, create employee guard, right? So this is my guard, right? Again, guard should be array because you can implement the multiple guards here, right? Guard should be a array, right? So now we are good, okay? So we'll see how this works. And ideally, if you are passing something like 10 or something, right, then it should not load go to this URL, otherwise it should work, okay? Let's see how it goes. Okay, so let's it loaded, okay? Let's click on here. It doesn't work. I mean, you don't know whether it's working or not. So let's put some alert message here to make sure we know this. Right. So before that, we are saying alert. Okay. So it will give you an alert and stop it. Right. So if you pass this, yeah, it says you are not authorized to do that, and yeah, it stay there. But if you pass let's move to this button because this button is very empty, right? So let's change this to here. Then you can have this one here because then you can later on refer from the GitHub, right? So let's remove this and let's pass this one into here. Okay, let's pass this one into here. Oops, you don't need this href, and you can pass it here, and let's pass something like 11, right? So when you pass 11, ideally it should work, right? When you pass 11, ideally it should work. Yes, it's working. But if you pass 10 here or some any even number, so it will not work, right? So now like this you can apply the guards to your routes, right? So this is, I mean, this is a very simple demonstration. So in the next video, not the next video, one of the next video, I'm going to show you how to protect these like a auth guard, right? If you know, if user not sign in, right, do not load this component, right? If user sign in, load this component, but if user not sign in, do not load this component, right? So I'll show you how you can do this. So it's the same thing, right? I mean, whatever the name you give to that, doesn't matter. You can say auth guard, you can say security guard, you can say identity guard or whatever, but it's just a guard, right? You can say like ABC guard. Name doesn't matter. It's working. The guard is a concept. Again, how it works, when you click that, it go like you click here, it says employees and pass some integer value. So it go here, right, the app module, and see, okay, this is matching. So now it load to employee component, and before it load, it says, can I activate this? I need to ask this from create employee guard, right? So it go to create employee guard and it execute the logic and see whether it's working, right? You can tell here if user sign in, right? So you can say you can get something like auth control or something like dot e-sign in, then load. If not, redirect to auth server, something like that. Okay, so we cover good amount of things about routing and guarding the router as well. So now I need to talk about very other important topic, which is services, right? Services and dependency injection, how we use that in Angular. What is a service? Service is something different from component, and it has its own purpose of living. For example, we can isolate certain functionality within a service, or if you want to share some data, you can give that responsibility to service. If you want to hold the data to access by other component, you can ask service to do that. So service is like, it has its own purpose of living and it is independent from the component, but you can use that, you can inject that into the component and use it. For For example, there are multiple ways you can use service. If you want, let's say you have employee service, you can tell like this, new employee service, right? We don't have employee service here, but you can do that. But we don't do this, because if you do this, the problem is your service only limit within to your component, right? Whatever you do here, you cannot, the service cannot access from, this service cannot access from other component. But if that is your expectation, you don't have to service, because service is there to stay independent from the component and act as an independent entity to the component, right? What we do is we inject the service from the constructor, because now I can access this service within my component, and also someone else can access the same service from their component, right? Like way we can share the states through the service as well, because what happened here, when you use service as an injectable, when you annotate service as injectable, it create instance and it share across your component. So now there are two different ways to do that. I'll show you first how to do it in example. Let's do something like this. I'm going to create a service, HTTP service, where you can get the data from HTTP backend. Then you have employee service. Employee service will talk to HTTP service to get the data, and employee service will pass this data to component. Before you learn this, you must know how RxJS work, reactive programming work. I have a separate video about that, explaining in detail about RxJS, what is the observer, what is the subscriber, what is the next, what is the error, what is the complete, and how we use those. Everything is in detail I explain, and I have a video in this channel. If you don't know the RxJS, you must watch that video before you come here, right? But if you know that concept, and if you think you know enough to handle it, you can keep watching. Otherwise, you must watch that. Otherwise, you won't understand this anything, because I'm not taking time to explain that here. What I'm going to do is I can create a service using usual command line. For example, ng generate service or whatever the service. But to explain you more and to step by step explain, I'm going to create it manual. In here, in the shell, I'm going to create HTTP service, http.service.ts. This service, I'm going to write export class HTTP service. And then I need to annotate this with the injectable annotation, right? And it's a decorator, right? Since I'm coming from Java, I always say annotation. Whenever I say annotation, make sure it's a decorator, right? Injectable, and here in the injectable, we need to pass a value. We need to link this service to somewhere, right? Usually we inject this to root. Now what happened? This service registered. This is called service registration. This service is registered with the root. That means any component can use this. For example, if you think, if an example, so this is the root. So now this service is, you attach it to here. That means anyone can use it who is under the root, because everyone is under the root. This is the like 95% way you do that, but there are very rare cases you can register the your services within the component. It doesn't have much use, but you can do that. But mainly you register your service within the to the root module, so that in that case you can use across your any component. So, but if you come from the older Angular background, you will see here you can put other section here as services, and then you can register that service as well. Still that's working, no problem with that. But if you, I don't know, you may have heard that, I don't remember whether we discussed this. So there is some concept called tree shaking on Angular compilation stage. So that way, if you put the service here, then it will really hard to do that process. So therefore, it is always a good practice. I think this come from Angular 7 or 8 or 6, I don't remember exactly. You can register service here like this, right? So within the service you can tell where your service linked to, who is your parent. Okay, so now same way I'm going to go here and give the provided in, and then here I'm going to create a constructor, right? So to get the HTTP data into, I need to have HTTP module. So you know now where the module being created. So I can have, let's me to import that first. Import from at Angular common HTTP, and I'm going to implement HTTP client module. Right, so here I'm going to use that HTTP client module, right? So now I have HTTP client module to use on my throughout my any component. So here in the constructor, I'm going to inject that as HTTP client module, right? HTTP client. So now here sorry, now here to support this service you need to have HTTP service running. Right now what we do is we get the data from this static data file. For that I use this tool. This is a really nice tool you to use called Mukun. So this Mukun tool you can run locally and you can create your own REST endpoints through that, right? In order to do your developer testing or anything, you can use this Mukun. It's a very nice tool. What you need to do is you can create an endpoint and you can create your payloads and everything here. So then that way you can when you invoke this like localhost and 3000 and the employee's endpoint, then it will give you the data, right? So you can see here, if I browse this, now I have the data. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do is I'm going to create a method get all employees, right? For get all employees I need to have a URL. So now I'm going to say employee URL. So this is string and the value is HTTP localhost port 3000 and then employees. So this is the good practice to do. I could place this within the employee service as well, but usually in your project if you have a multiple HTTP call, it is right practice to have a separate HTTP service and expose HTTP methods to other services to consume, right? Because now you know, because that is the whole purpose of service. Isolate your functionality, isolate your logic within something, right? So that's why we use the service. So that therefore it's a right practice to do. That's what I'm following. Otherwise it's completely okay you write this code within the employee service because it's the same thing. Okay, so now here what I'm going to do, I'm going to return this dot http dot get, and what is the URL? Employee URL. So now if you go to this get method, you will see it return observable. I'm not going to talk about observable here, and what is the observable. You must go and watch my previous video. I'll put the link in the description as well. Go and watch that and understand how RSJX work, right? Not only that, there are a few other videos I explain about RSJX. You need to watch those before you come here because I'm not explaining this here right this moment. Okay. Now I need to tell I am returning observable with employee array. I'm returning observable with employee array. So therefore I'm going to tell I need to get employee array from this endpoint. Now you understand the complete picture. I'm going to talk to HTTP and tell get the data from this URL. Whatever you are getting is convert to employee array and return. You understand completely how this exact picture works, right? So now I'm going to create a separate service in employee. So this one I'm going to use Angular CLI to generate, so that way you know both, right? I just created that manually to show you this injectable and everything. Service employees slash employee, so it will put the rest of the thing. Okay, so you go here, it has employee service. Cool. Right, so now you can see here it generated everything for us. I didn't want to do that in the previous one, that's what I used previous technique, right? So here now what I'm going to do is I'm going to inject employee service to HTTP service to here, HTTP service, and it's a type of HTTP service. And here also I'm going to write a method called get employees. You can decide whether you want to solve the observable here or you want to return that, and I'm going to return it as a employee array. Okay. Return this dot HTTP service dot get employees, right? This is bad, you can see it's visible my URL, so I need to make it mark it as a private, because otherwise other outside my outside my this service can change the URL. Okay, so now this is good. Now we go back to employee component. Here in the employee component, so far how we get the employees as like this. Okay, I'm going to remove this. So that means you don't have this one and you don't have this one. Now we have a problem because it's expecting default value. We don't have a default value. We have a solution like this. You can have either you can initialize or you can have a definite it's a definite or whatever. This is assignment. So what it simply does is we promise, it's like a Java we says casting, right? So what we do is we promise here we will set this value later, right? So with that way either you can assign undefined, but this way is fine. Now I need to inject my employee service here. Employee service is a type of employee service, and on init I'm going to set this value, right? I'm going to set this value, this dot employee service dot get employees. Now if you watch the video, if you watch the NGRX video, sorry, if you watch the RxJS video, you must watch that, unless if you're familiar with RxJS is fine, you need to subscribe, right? So I'm not going to explain here what is the relationship between observable and subscribe. Observable emit data and subscribe can subscribe it, right? So here in the subscribe it has multiple iteration, right? One is a next in the next mean when something emit from the observer it comes here, right? Observable it comes here. So now since HTTP what it does is it take the entire response and do the single emit, so therefore it will come here. So now for the emit what we do is we get the data, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this dot filtered employees, as I remember it's a filtered employees, and set the data, right? And also I think I need to set the employees. I don't remember exactly how we did that, but let's save this for both. And this dot employees equal this dot filtered employees. Here should be data. Okay, cool. So now what happens is we take the data and we replace into our our employee arrays, right? So let's execute and see how this works. So now since we have removed this one, right? Since we have removed this one, it's no longer coming from our data file. Let's execute and see what happened. Okay, so now you go back to your application and refresh and see. Now you go here, list employee. We get employees, right? So you go home, we come here, we get employees. So let's change little bit and see. Let's say this employee name. Let's type something like do at the end. Right? I hope I don't know whether I have to restart that and oh no. Right, so we'll see that. Oh yeah, it's coming. Right, so that means it's guaranteed it's coming from our service. Right, so if you do little walkthrough again, what happened here? We have HTTP service. This is the service really talk to the backend. Right, this is the service really talk to the backend, and then this service take the data and send into pass into this employee service. Right, as observable, right? Observable mean this someone has to subscribe this. So when someone subscribe, if there's any data comes, that data will come. Then they can collect the data. So then you go to employee component, and here within the component, what we do is on the init we can use this and we can directly assign the data to our array. Right? This is okay, but as you subscribe, you can unsubscribe if you want. How you can do that? So you can create a value called subscriber. Right? It's a type of subscription. It's a type of subscription. Again, you can use let's define assignment here. And from this here you can tell this dot subscription subscriber, right? So this dot subscriber equal to this, right? And then also you can get on destroy hook and implement the on destroy hook here, right? On destroy this dot subscriber dot unsubscribe. Right? This is something good practice to do. Unsubscribe all the subscription you made. Right? That way you can save some resources and load from this, because then it doesn't wait into some response anymore. Okay. This is cool, right? We learn how to use a service and also how to use routing and also how to use the guards to protect the component and the route. Here, if you want, as I explained before, if you want, you can implement this entire logic here. But let's say you have a project service and you have some different services. Everyone talk to backends, right? So the good way is have to separate services, expose those, talk to the backend, and then expose observable to other services. Then other service can consume, because then if you want to change something like authentication mechanism, like some token, some URL, if you want to refactor this or the HTTP module, it's easy. You can come and do here, and also that is the purpose of having the service. Okay, so we learned a lot. And I think you know everything now. I mean, you can try this to like share the data, right? You can give the data from one component, and you can get the data from other component using the same service, and you can do a lot of things now, right? You understand how to use these techniques, and few more things to discuss, especially NGRX, because this is the RxJS observer and subscriber, but we have to talk about the NGRX. I'll create a video about that, and also I think I covered almost everything, but if you think I need to cover something more, just comment below, or as usual, reach to my Facebook page, and make sure you subscribe to subscribe to the channel, and also you follow and like Facebook page and Instagram. Then we can stay in touch. Then more than anything, stay safe, take care.